from Group 13. Our members are Amaya, Hashani, Vishwa, Hirusha, Tilanka, Nuni, Madhusha, Buddhi, Akila and Kavindi. For the following video, the contribution is as follows. Hirusha, Tilanka, Madhusha, Amaya and me, Hashani, will be giving the voices, while Vishwa, Nuni, Buddhi, Akila and Kavindi will contribute by preparing the slides. As Group 13, our case study is Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb, 1925. Parties of the Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb, 1925 case. The offerer is Your Glass Company Limited and the offeree is Mr. Jubb. Case facts of the Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb, 1925 case. The vendors sought to enforce a contract. The court had rejected the defendant's plea first that the vendor knew of his incapacity and that therefore the contract was void, and that second, the contract should not be enforced in inequality because of his incapacity.
So, I'm going to talk about legal areas which was discussed in the judgment. Honorable Judge Sergeant LJ discussed 3 issues. First one is, was there concluded contract apart from the lunacy? As per our idea, what we can see first is there is no contract because Mr. Jubb is said to be lunatic. But if we go further into the case law and applicable law, we will see that there is a concluded contract apart from lunacy. Second issue is, was there contract enforceable at law? This will be discussed further by the applicable law. The third issue is, if it was enforceable at law, was there any case for saying that equity would restrain the enforcement of the contract? That is to say, in the case one in which, prior to the Judicature Act, a bill would have lain for injunction to prevent the plaintiff from enforcing his remedies at law, there was a plainly concluded contract.
In this case law, the offeree, Mr. Jubb, is said to be a person who is suffering from lunacy. The applicable law to any person suffering from mental illness or any mental disturbance are different from law which is used for issuing judgments for any normal person. According to the applicable law, if a person suffers from mental illness and has no idea they are suffering from mental illness, they are not in a position to enter into a contract. Agreements with people with intellectual disabilities and those with mental illness are said to be void. Certain mental disabilities may be sufficient to allow a person to refuse a contract under certain circumstances. According to the High Court addressing the issue of a person's soundness of mind when involving in contractual dealings in 1954, it is stated that it requires in relation to each particular matter or piece of business transacted that each party shall have such soundness of mind as to be capable of understanding the general nature of what he is doing by his participation. So this means as a result, if a person is so inebriatedly mentally ill or senile that they have no idea they are entering into a contract, they lack the necessary contractual capacity. They cannot enter into the contract, and any contract which they enter is said to be void, and there is no any agreement which has been enforced there. But in the other hand, if the mind is affected by the problem, but still they are aware of it and entering into a contract, the capacity to contract will most likely exist unless the other party deliberately takes advantage of their weakness. So in general, the law concerns lack of capacity in voiding a contract to any lunatic person or a person who is suffering from mental illness or mental disability. So in this case law, Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb, Mr. Jubb is said to be suffering from mental illness, but yet Mr. Jubb does not have any evidence to show that the Your Glass Company Limited knew or suspected Mr. Jubb was suffering from an unconscious state of mind and that he was mentally disabled during entering into a contract. So, considering the applicable law, Mr. Jubb decided to appeal the trial case Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb 1924 because in the trial case the judgment which was issued was the contract was enforceable and it was a non-voidable contract. But considering the applicable law, even though Mr. Jubb decided to appeal again, the judgment which was issued again in the appeal case by the Honorable Judge Sergeant LJ was that the contract was enforceable and it was a non-voidable contract. The reason for this is Mr. Jubb did not have any proof to show that Your Glass Company Limited suspected or knew his unconscious state of mind, or that Your Glass Company Limited were trying to take advantage of his unconscious state of mind when he was entering into the contract. Simply, Mr. Jubb did not have any evidence against the Your Glass Company Limited to show that Your Glass Company Limited knew of the unconscious state of mind of Mr. Jubb when entering into a contract. This concludes the judgment of the case, and it's not considered to be a judgment which was issued for an insane person because of the lack of evidence by Mr. Jubb to prove that he was insane when he was entering into a contract.
Considering the case facts, questions arose by the Honorable Judge Sergeant LJ and applicable law, the judgment was issued as follows. This is an appeal case from Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb 1924. The defendant denied liability under the contract after the vendor brought an action against the committee of his estate as a person of unsound mind. He said that the fact that he was of unsound mind was known to vendor. Even though Jubb appealed, it failed. Finally, the judgment issued by the Honorable Sergeant LJ from the appeal case Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb 1924 is as follows. The contract was valid at law because the vendor was unaware of the unsoundness of mind. The contract was not impeachable in equity because the purchaser failed to establish any of the four circumstances on which he relied in order to establish the plea in equity.
So, I'm going to talk about rationale for the decision made by the judges in case of a contract which is not a reasonable one and which is made by an innocent person. That contract can be enforced the other person not knowing of the insanity.
We hope this video was successful in describing the events which took part in Your Glass Company Limited vs. Jubb 1925. All the main parties of the case, the summary of the case, the judgment of the case, what are the issues which arose in considering the judgment of the case, the applicable law, and the rationale for the decision made by the judges were described in this video. We hope this was successful in explaining every event which took place here during this case law. Thank you so much.